Friday afternoon to everybody. We're here for what's been a daily update on COVID-19 and its continuing escalation here in the Commonwealth. We continue to hope that the steps that we have taken are going to have an impact in slowing the growth of this virus. But today we are reporting what I believe is the second highest number of cases we have had since our first case on March 6th, with 797 new cases of COVID-19. That brings our total number of cases to 25,931. What it means is that we are continuing to see an increase and a growth that we absolutely have to stop. And we'll be watching these very carefully through the weekend, and if we do not see the numbers come down, we're going to have both a series of recommendations and steps that we'll need to take sometime early next week. Remember that we still have a known mortality rate of about 3%. And if you apply that to 797 cases, it means we expect to lose a lot of Kentuckians, and when you add up yesterday and the day before and the day before that and the day before that, it's going to be heartbreaking. So let's make sure that we are more committed than ever. Let's make sure that we are not violating these basic rules that we know can help us. Let's make sure we realize that each and every one of our actions can impact someone else, and let's just realize that this thing is escalating in Kentucky, that we are seeing more cases than we ever imagined before. And now is the time for everybody to recognize the severity of the situation that we're in. Total number of tests to date, 574,233. That's 8,743 more tests than yesterday. Our number of people currently hospitalized is up from yesterday. It's at 618 today. ICU is down a little bit, 130. But our positivity rate today, based on our rolling average, is 5.28%. That is now over the 5% mark that the White House and others suggest is in a danger zone, and where they begin to recommend that we start taking steps. Now, yesterday we were under that. Today we're over it. We're going to want to see what happens in the next couple days. Again, we're at least a couple weeks now from when our requirement to wear facial coverings started, so we need to start seeing some impact from it. I hope different things that went on after we put that into place didn't suggest to people that they didn't have to wear one of those. So we all know now that it's not just a requirement, it should be our duty. Again, how we manage this crisis, whether we can bring down cases, is going to determine how many lives we lose, is going to determine what economic impact we have going forward, because our reopening and our economy are now tied to how well that we deal with this virus. And it's going to be directly related to when we can get our kids back in school for in-person classes. New cases by county: Jefferson 206, Fayette 76, Warren 41, Kenton 27, Boone 26, Bell 23, Harlan 17, Bullitt 16, Barron 15, Hardin 15, McCracken 15, Scott 15, Laurel 14, Campbell, Henderson, and Shelby 12, Jessamine 11, Knox 10, and a number of others. We continue to see young children under 5 more and more test positive. Today we have 19 kids under 5. The youngest being 1 month old, a 1 month old little girl and baby girl in Laurel County. So let's remember that this is spreading to everyone, that everybody can get infected, and that everyone can spread that infection. Today we're also reporting 7 additional deaths. That's 7 more Kentuckians that we have lost to this virus. And again, we see people in their 50s and in their 60s in this list at a level that seems to be increasing daily. A 59-year-old woman from Hardin, a 54-year-old woman from Warren, a 66-year-old man from Oldham, a 74-year-old woman from Warren, an 85-year-old woman from Jefferson, an 82-year-old man from Jefferson, and an 81-year-old man from Boone County. Let's remember these families need our help, and because of the surge in cases, we're probably going to see more families out there that in the near future need our help. So let's not get tired. Let's light our houses up green. Let's ring those bells every single morning at 10 a.m. People need us now more than ever, not just to wear the facial covering, not just to engage in social distancing, not just to cut their social occasions at their home to 10, not just to cancel your vacation if you're going to any state that has above a 15% positivity rate, but also they need your compassion and they need your help when they have suffered the worst. Long-term care facilities. We have 4 additional residents and 18 additional staff that have tested positive, 6 additional deaths attributed to residents. 3 new facilities now have additional cases. So that's the tough news, and it's tougher news than we faced in a while. And again, it ought to be sobering, but it ought to make us committed to doing what it takes moving forward. We are still dealing with the world as it was about 2 weeks ago, and I don't think that we as a state are acting the same way we did 2 weeks ago. I think we are doing a lot better in what it takes to defeat this virus. And I want to make sure I celebrate the good things that we see out there. So I want to start with Kelby Robinson. She is 4 years old. She's the daughter of Kelsey Robinson, a Bullitt County firefighter. And she is the niece and granddaughter to 2 Bullitt County firefighters. And she's doing her part to keep her community safe. She gets it. And remember, her parents and her grandparents have been those frontline warriors that would be the first to get infected. Wearing a mask protects Kelby, and it also protects her entire family. Let's move to the next one. This is a mom taking her kids to the Capitol. We're in this building right now so that they could show their commitment to doing the steps that it takes to make sure that we can get through this virus and we can get through it together. All right, this is one of my new favorites. These are staycation pictures. These mean that we have canceled the concerning trips to dangerous out-of-state places, and we've got more people out in Kentucky in areas that maybe we haven't gone to as much as we even should have. This is Cumberland Falls, and we appreciate this couple altering what they probably had planned to make sure they're doing it safely and responsibly. So I've been making videos to individuals in birthdays like 98th and 100, especially when they can't get out and celebrate them the same way. I didn't know about this one, but it's pretty special when somebody is having a birthday as rare and as special as a 98th birthday, and making sure that it's done safely, but again, with modern technology, one that everybody can enjoy. All right, so one of the things that is really important when we can is that our youth are still able to get out and to do the activities that can help make sure that first they get out of the house and give mom and dad a minute or two. But second, get the interaction that they need. This is a pretty neat one. This is our business owners trying to take care of those kiddos and do things right. So I want to thank you for all of those positive examples, and we need more of them. We need to make sure that other people see us out there doing the right things, because I think people watch leaders like what we saw in these positive examples, and the more leaders there are out there trying to show the best of the best, I think the more compliance that we will get, and that will help us defeat this virus. All right, let's talk about some economic development news, because while we are dealing with the present, we want to make sure that we are planning for the future. I tell you what, while we want to get back to something like the old normal, I don't want it to be normal in Kentucky when we're through this. I want us to be a better, more prosperous Kentucky, one where we are aimed at the future. It's one of the reasons that agri-tech is so important to us. It's about being a leader in the economies of the future and not chasing the jobs of the past. So today we're announcing a public-private partnership that'll help create tech startups and high-paying, knowledge-based jobs across the Commonwealth by commercializing Kentucky's own best ideas. When I think about this, I think about the stories we've all heard now, whether it's Steve Jobs or Bill Gates in a garage, taking great ideas, taking some technology that was out there, but building a multi-billion-dollar company. It all starts with an idea and the know-how of some really bright people. So we're investing nearly $1.16 million to create the Kentucky Commercialization Ventures, which will grow the state's tech sector by working with inventors, scientists, and students, identifying and advancing innovations to produce intellectual property. As well, it will keep these innovations and move them towards market-ready products and services. It's also going to assist in creating startups with high growth potential. So folks, it's really hard to go out and to recruit a Fortune 100 or 500 to move their location. Now, there's lots of reasons that that's difficult. But some of the largest companies in America right now were started not that long ago by great ideas that ultimately grew into large companies. By trying to foster the innovation, by trying to support the very best ideas that are out there, we can build a brighter future based on our own intellectual capabilities and intellectual capital. This is a way that we invest to make sure that our future can be based on Kentucky-born, Kentucky-bred, and Kentucky-raised companies that can employ a lot of Kentuckians in high-end and well-paying jobs. So this new partnership provides a model that is unique in the United States in that it includes all 8 of our public universities, as well as the state's community and technical colleges. That means we're working with U of L, UK, EKU, WKU, NKU, Kentucky State University, Morehead State University, Murray State University, and the Kentucky Community and Technical College System. You can find out more at kyinnovation.com/KCV. And even though mainly what we do in these is to make sure that people have the information on the now, and the now is in a state of crisis. That doesn't mean that we don't plan for that better day and to make sure it is a much better day. So, a whole lot of us are stuck at home. If you have that next great idea, you've got time right now. This is a true opportunity to put some of that intellectual capability at work, and I'd like to see from Kentucky just how many new companies can be born from ideas that occurred during this period of time. I bet that it can be significant. Today, we're also announcing on the unemployment side that we're extending our contract with Ernst & Young for another 5 weeks to continue assisting with our unemployment insurance backlog. As a reminder, EY is one of the big 4 accounting and consulting firms and has significant experience in this area. They've helped other states with their problems and has the personnel, skill, and experience to help us here in the Commonwealth. EY has the largest presence of any of those big 4 in Kentucky, with over 250 employees in its Louisville office. So when we announced the contract with EY 3.5 weeks ago, I said I hoped that we could get through 50,000 claims. As of yesterday, EY had helped with more than 56,000 claims, and the last day on the original, with 2 days to go on the current contract. Thus far, EY has met all of the expectations. And what that means is that for many of those, they're going to hit the processing of those claims soon, and for the others, 95% of the work is done, and what remains in a disputed claim is one of our final groups here in the state to write that 1 or 2 page letter to the federal government that documents the decision on why that person deserves unemployment. It has been a significant amount of work without which we would be far, far behind. The cost of the renewed contract is $4.4 million. And the renewed contract and original contract are both coming from our CARES Act funding, not the general fund, not coming from the normal budget at all. So the vast majority of claims in that 56,000 that EY has worked on are our most complex. That's why they have been around for so long. They are typically disputed by the employer, or they have not just a wrong check box, but some real significant issues that have to be worked through. And that's what has been primarily remaining since March, and that's where the work has been done to date. If our staff were to drop everything and only work on the issues EY had been working on, it would have taken 3 months, we think, to do the work that they have done to date. That means in-person services would have stopped and we would have fallen further behind. But this new contract that continues and provides us a group of employees that lessens a little bit by each week is going to help us catch up not just on initial claims where we're doing much better, but also those issues that arise with the second and third payments where people may have made an error in requesting those. There are a significant amount of those out there. We think we can move through them very fast because our goal here has always been to fully catch up. And let's admit, that is tough when so many new claims are continually coming in. But we know we've made progress, we can feel it out there, and this additional investment is going to make sure that we don't go through another period like what we have been through, and that people are timely helped. All right, with that, we're going to open it up for questions. I know it is a Friday, and everybody probably has plans that, of course, are socially distanced, that are not occurring, and can you put the slide up on the different states that we shouldn't be traveling to, and that if they are at your home, have 10 people or less. I lose track of where I've started on the different days. I think I started over here yesterday. So, is that right? All right, Nick, we'll start with, okay, we'll start all the way over with Mike. The question is about a call that I was on with Kentucky Council of Churches, and we've also put calls into other organizations. What we were discussing is the rising number of cases and a real concern that we're seeing, and almost a trend where somebody goes on vacation, brings it back from the beach, and then goes to church, and we see a spread through that church. And so I talked with them, and this is, let me be clear, there's no mandate, there is no order, there's no executive order, there's no regulation, there's nothing like that. But I recommended for the next 2 Sundays, with the escalating number of cases that we have, that it's a very dangerous time, and recommended that people do the virtual or the drive-up services. To those that we're going to go ahead with in-person services, because again, there's no mandate, and there's no shame, I just ask people to double down on making sure everybody's wearing a mask, that we do even extra cleaning, and that people are spread out. It was a really positive conversation about just where we are at the time, and it's proof that we reach out and we talk to these groups a lot. And even when we're not making a request public, we're talking just directly congregation to congregation. That's what that discussion was. So let me make sure nobody's trying to close any church. We were just talking to our various houses of worship about where we are right now and making recommendations for their consideration about the dangers we face, and we hope to get turned around in the next couple weeks.
Some people are curious as to, a lot of these documents are from 2016 last and for you guys to continue to follow up with that, and why did you proceed?
So this question is about a couple of legal actions that had been pursued, not publicly, for several months, and let me explain both of them. As we know, right before I came into office, our former governor issued a number of pardons that raised very serious concerns with people all over Kentucky. These are concerns that were voiced by members of both parties. They included pardons of people convicted of murder, and they included a pardon of one of the worst sexual assaults that is imaginable. A lot came out after that raised concerns, and we kept getting open records requests because we're the governor's office and we maintain the pardon files for those records. What we learned is that we didn't have all the records, and that in fact some of the former employees of the past administration had taken those records with them. Those are public records that if they are subject to the Open Records Act, that the public has a right to know, and I believe that it's our duty to go out and get them. And so that's what we've been doing, and I think that's our job, and I think the public would want to know the basis of those pardons. We're expecting to get complete files, and then those will be available for the public. We don't necessarily have a secondary action. We're not trying to investigate the prior administration over pardons. We're trying to have the full set of files, and then anybody who is looking at something, I think the Attorney General called for an FBI investigation, at least they'd have access to everything. And I think under pardons, do you have the section of the Constitution? Under pardons, we have a constitutional obligation to keep the file related to them. Now there is a second piece where the Finance Cabinet was looking for documents. So there's an Office of Inspector General. It was actually created under the last administration, and their job is to make sure that we aren't seeing fraud or waste in the procurement system and in contracts and the like. One of the main things that the last Inspector General had done was an investigation through a contract with a law firm called Taft. And when the new Inspector General showed up, all the documents were gone. Nothing was there. You know, from a contract that was $600,000 that the state had paid, all of a sudden there's nothing there. And so they requested them from that law firm, and my understanding is that they found two concerning things in there that I think all of us would want to know. Number one, a lot of meetings with the law firm before the contract came out. Number two, when the scoring came out, that law firm was not the winner. And then number three, suddenly there were presentations, the law firm got the full amount of points, and suddenly they had the contract. We need to figure out if there's anything wrong or not in that. But possibly the more concerning thing that they have found is an email from one of the lawyers in the last administration that involved lawyers working on this contract that basically said, create private email addresses so that we can communicate with each other. Now, I'm paraphrasing, but that's really concerning. And I just think that we need to make sure we know what it is. If we have anything that's worth turning over to people when it comes in, we'll do it. Again, that's not action that we take, but it raises issues that an Inspector General is supposed to look at. We're not re-looking at any investigation, but you got to make sure a contract wasn't fixed. And I mean, there's open records and ethical and other issues if you intentionally create private emails with an outside law firm to communicate. Lawrence, that was a really long answer.
Back to the request to churches. Who have you talked to besides the Council of Churches, and are you making this request of all churches in the state?
So we made, I had a direct conversation with the Council of Churches on looking at the next couple weeks. I believe Rocky Atkins has talked to the executive director of the Baptist Convention, or at least they were exchanging messages. I know that there was some other reach out too. I'd just say that the next 2 weeks are going to be real critical and are dangerous in where we are right now. So I just ask, regardless of what the group is, can you do something virtually? Can you do something in a drive-in service? And if you're not, just double down on all those things you're trying to do to prevent. Again, not an order, not a mandate, a request to try to keep parishioners safe. Let's see, in August, there's a 127 yard sale where people from multiple counties, multiple out-of-state locations will be setting up booths along Highway 127 through Kentucky. There'll be massive gatherings along 127 that will not be regulated by anybody. The face-to-face contact and handling of all sorts of items will no doubt put many at risk. So I don't know about this yard sale personally. What I would say is there's requirements for yard sales, just like anything else. People are going to need to wear that facial covering because in something like that, you're going to be closer than 6 feet to people, practicing that hygiene. Anybody that's got a booth ought to be wearing gloves for what's touched, and I would establish if you want to touch it and handle it, you better buy it rule, because otherwise things are going back into many people's hands. Nobody wants, if this is a big annual tradition, I apologize, I don't know about it. Nobody wants it to turn into something that's remembered based on the spread of COVID-19. Tom.
The Ernst & Young contract, you said, is 4.4 million?
Yes.
It was 7.4 last month, wasn't it? How did you get the better deal?
There are fewer employees, and so the question is, why is the EY contract less than the last time? It's because there are fewer employees and they decrease over time. Our goal is for this to be the last contract we have to have with them. And so all of this has been based on the type of employee we get. For instance, Colorado had not full-time EY employees. They brought in others and then supplemented it. The numbers that we get, the speed at which we hope that they work. And at the end, we were able to do the comparison. They hit all the benchmarks. This is set on those same general parameters. And I think what we claimed we wanted to get done under the contract, we have gotten done. We still have to take the last step to provide relief to many of those people, and we just got to slog through that. Pays for by CARES Act fully. Won't come out of the general fund at all. Karen?
A lot of questions, and you mentioned the second and third UI payments that you expect that to go pretty quickly.
Yes.
The big question is, if they can't get a hold of somebody in the office, do they need to let you know, or are you already aware of it on your end?
The question is on the second and third claims where there are issues. I believe we know the vast majority of those claims, but I tell you what, we'll do a briefing on Monday where we'll actually get either Amy Cubbage or the secretary in to talk about that and to give people what they need. Remember, this is a system that's set up to get people to quit. This is before all of this, and it's wrong to set a system up that way. That you got to apply, you get your letter, you register online, then you request payment. Those are all different steps, and then you got to go back every 2 weeks. It's an unfortunate system, and it shouldn't have taken something like this to see that that's not how you set this up. But that's going to change. It's going to require some real changes in law, both the state and the federal. Chris.
Kind of a two-part question, same topic. You mentioned earlier that if things don't change and seeing how things go over the weekend, you may have some recommendations that may impact schooling. Will your observations of bars, restaurants, things of that nature across the Commonwealth this weekend factor into that? Will you just be looking at stats? And will you be watching what we're expecting to be rather large protests in Louisville this weekend? Will that factor if they're not wearing their masks at protests?
The question is some of the things that we'd be looking at over the weekend about recommendations we would make next week as far as schools or the White House's other recommendations. It'll be based on the data at that point. Remember, what we're looking at is data from about 14 days ago that shows where we are right now. So we'll be looking at the cases, the positivity rates, the hospitalizations, and the ICUs. But at this point, with the increasing numbers, we need to see a stabilization or the beginning of a decrease in positivity rate. And right now, just with the overwhelming numbers, the numbers themselves. When you look at 700 plus cases, it's not like we're sitting at that 300 and we might have 350 or 250. We've got to have a real change in the data. Now we'll look and watch everything that's going on. Our hope is that any demonstrations this weekend, that everybody wears masks, that everybody spreads out, and in bars and the rest, you got to do it. I mean, we're going to have to close bars if we don't get control of this. And if you're a bar and you're not requiring anybody to do what's required, you're shutting yourself down. And I say that knowing that there are many out there that are really trying, and sadly they might be hurt by those that are not.
So George, it's more data than observation?
It'll be the decisions on Monday will be based primarily on data that go back 14 days, as opposed to just observations we see. That might factor into what 14 days from then will look like, but it'll be based on the data. Morgan.
The state's interim education chief sent out an email yesterday to superintendents basically recommending the districts who have plans to go back to in-person classes consider and start planning to either start out with non-traditional instruction or at least push their starting dates back to August 15th or later. At this point, do you agree with that recommendation?
A question about what's being put out. Who was the email from? Okay, that is an email that was out to superintendents talking about if we can't get the numbers stabilized, either starting with distance learning, virtual learning, or pushing your start date back. Those are the two steps that you would take. If we can't get the numbers under control by the beginning of next week, I think you can expect that we will recommend to superintendents that they push their start date back if it is in early August. I mean, I think that that's reasonable, and everybody knows that that's coming. If we're still at 700, or if we've gone even worse, starting right after that would be a real challenge. Now, I think superintendents ought to have the flexibility, certainly, to decide between the two of those what works. Listen, I want to get back to in school, in class schooling, and so for me, the likely recommendation would just be about when the earliest we would recommend in-person classes are. I desperately want to get my kids back in school. I also want it to be safe, and so I think the people of Kentucky can expect I'm going to approach this as a governor, but they got a parent who's sending kids to school too.
About unemployment, one of them will probably be easy to answer. The first one, the Ernst & Young contract, how long is the contract extension going for?
5 weeks.
5 weeks. The other question I had, as far as the number of unresolved claims,
5 weeks.
The last data snapshot that I got from the Labor Cabinet was from July 22nd. It said 69,000 unresolved claims still left. Do you have an updated snapshot about just where Kentucky's...
The snapshot of claims left, and we're trying to get more accurate data. That's been our challenge throughout all of this. I only learned about a week and a half ago that when you looked at, say, unresolved March claims, that they weren't all filed in March. And that's what we were all assuming, and that's what everybody was rightfully reporting based on the way we presented the data. If you filed a claim right now and you had a claim for a day in March, in the way that our numbers were shown, it wouldn't be a July claim, it would be a March claim. And people would say, well, why haven't we resolved that? Well, we just got it. I think that we are south of the overall number that you got right now. We'll need to get it to you, but we're trying to break those out too. I know we're under 5,000 initial March claims, and most all of those are awaiting just that 2-page letter or 1-page letter that's left that we have to send to the federal government. Most of those can't be approved or closed without that letter, and that means that 95% of all the work is done on the claim. We just got to slog through that and get it out. So what happens is we've done, if there are 30,000 of those, we've done 95% of the work on 30,000. We just got to get that last 5% done to get it through. And so I think what you'll see is that they will go down a little, and then they will go down a whole lot. But what we know is that people have been contacted. They know where their claim is by and large through this system, and we just got to get that letter done. And that letter is a pain, right? It's just another step in the process, but one we have to do.
I have a two-part question on the Breonna Taylor investigation. Your view on it is today describes the relationship with Attorney General as difficult. And I know you're not privy to the details of the investigation, but are you in a position to request a briefing by the Attorney General before the release of the findings to the public? And my second part is, are you prepared to recall that if these officers are not all criminals?
These are two questions on the Breonna Taylor, investigation and evaluation. Am I in a place to request a briefing from the Attorney General before decisions made? We will make that request, and I imagine that they'll honor that request. When I've talked about the process, I've just tried to talk about some things that I think would be helpful in the process, which are explanations. Explanations of the amount of time, explanations of what the process is. I just think it's very important that people have context and understand a lot of the facts and the evidence so that when any decision is made, there's not a vacuum there that again, people can fill in with different things. I haven't received any briefing to date. I can't tell you specifically where they are on it, though it does appear that they are actively working on it. Well, as governor, I'm going to have to be prepared for whatever decision is made from there. That'll be my job.
Yesterday we asked you about some students, or some faculty as well, sending a letter to the University of Kentucky asking for a route to be removed. I'm curious to know if you have since, I think yesterday you had a number of articles, but I'm curious to know if you have since an update on that.
So I've read the article. I haven't seen the letter yet or talked to UK. And this is one of those. This is about the name of Reparina that I want to make sure that I understand, or that I listen. Understand is the wrong word. That I listen to the concerns that are out there, and then I understand any perspective from UK. At this point, I think the most important thing I can do is listen.
Mandate went into effect 2 weeks ago today, and you're seeing the second highest number of cases. Does this signal that you're probably going to have to take some additional action next week?
The question is does the level of cases plus the fact that we put in a requirement on wearing a facial covering suggest we're going to need to take some additional action next week? To be fully transparent, if we don't see numbers stabilize over the weekend, yes, we're going to have to take more. We cannot allow an escalation to continue. We're trying to avoid this with everything we have, but at some point we got to do what we got to do, and the White House has put out the steps that, at least according to their modeling, will help us get it under control. Tom?
Governor, are you aware if positive antibody tests are counted in the daily positive reports?
The question is on different types of tests and whether they're included in the daily positive reports. I don't have Dr. Stack here today. Let me get you that answer. I know in the past we have been able to pull out the results by each and every type of test that is out there. And while I think I may know the answer, I do not want to give an incorrect answer in this, because there are folks out there that want to try to poke holes in the data, whether it's accurate or not. I can tell you that whether the number of overall cases we have is, on any given day is 743 or 728, we're trending in the wrong direction, and we've got to turn it around. And I'm hopeful that we can. I don't want it to sound like doom and gloom. We know what to do here. It just takes the will. And part of what I need to be doing is encouraging the will, like I try to do with my son, Will. It works some of the time. Karen.
We had another high yesterday with 100 cases. I know you said this has no borders, but will you potentially be looking at certain areas of the state taking different precautions?
The question is, with Lexington hitting a high, will we look at different portions of the state to take additional precautions? I believe that the first set of steps that we'll need to take will likely be statewide. That doesn't mean that there aren't more surgical steps that we can take as related to potentially specific businesses. Once we are back up and running in school, those will certainly be more regional decisions when you have positive tests or a group of tests that come out. Now, when it reaches a certain level, though, you need a full statewide reaction to make sure it doesn't just hop from one county to another. And as you've seen, we've got counties now that I'm reporting double-digit cases in we never talked about. They probably took weeks, maybe even a month, to have their very first case. So the challenge right now is the spread is so significant that we want to make sure that we're stopping it everywhere. And then when we believe that we have generally got it under control or stabilized, under control is probably not where we'll be, but stabilized, that allows us to make take much more specific action. Chris?
Today I interviewed Republican Congressman Trey Hollingsworth of Indiana, who came out against a Republican governor in Indiana, a friend of yours, Eric Holcomb, over his mask mandate, whose Attorney General has also come out, who's also a Republican, against the Republican governor's mask mandate. Trey Hollingsworth, the congressman, says if you're going to make an executive order, you're going to put punishments in there. That's not the way to do these things, and he's not for the mask mandate. You see Republicans going after each other over there in Indiana. So pointing that out, your Attorney General is not the only one going after their governor over some executive orders and mandates. Do you feel
So
like
I've got company?
Do you feel like maybe you have company with Eric Holcomb now, or what do you think about the fact? What do you think about his mask mandate?
You know, Governor Eric Holcomb and Governor DeWine did the right thing when they also put a requirement in for people to wear facial covering. It's not just the right thing because we know it will reduce the spread of the virus. It's the right thing for us because the more states that are doing it regionally, the better and more effective our response will be. The fact that Governor Holcomb did it while being opposed by members of his own party shows that he's doing the right thing and not necessarily the political thing. And to those that oppose it, I'd say the same thing that I would here. This is a matter of life and death. This can save lives. We all ought to be wearing one. I'm with Governor Holcomb in that argument, and we'll support him any way I can. Morgan?
This potentially might be the last weekend for a little while, bars are open. I guess I'm wondering, you talk about importance of following the rules. What do you envision as a safe environment for bar? Because I think you talked about in restaurants, people have to very different meals, and in a bar typically, you've always got a drink that you obviously can't do with your mask on, you know?
The question is, what is a safe environment that we could see in a bar? And I do think that it's safe, and I think there are a lot out there who are doing it safely. I had a call a week and a half ago with a great set of business owners that have worked so hard on it. And it's everything from some of them just take reservations, almost all of them, everybody has to have a seat. Mask is required upon entry and any time that you're not physically taking a drink or eating something. They have spread out outside and inside to reduce their capacity. They limit the size of groups and potentially even the interaction with groups. I think that bars could operate very safely if they operated very similar to how a restaurant should operate. Now that changes the bar experience, at least as I remember it many, many years ago. But it's probably what would be necessary to operate it safely now. And it would not be a forever closure if we have to go there. My hope is it'd be a couple weeks and we could come back in a much safer version. But we also need everybody out there enforcing this. And it's not just the owner. It's folks going there if they know and they look around that nobody's wearing a mask, everybody's standing up, nobody's social distancing. You know, that's going to work against the establishment that they want to go to. All right.
Back to the Ernst & Young contract, I don't know if you've addressed it this week, but the report that the contract that Kentucky signed up for far more lucrative than what Colorado signed up for, 5 times more, according to the Courier-Journal. Some have criticized the state for entering such a contract. What's your response to that?
The question is on the EY contract, which has now been discussed in 3 separate hearings, and we provided sufficient testimony on it. The reason that ours costs more than Colorado is, first, we had 3 times the number of people as Colorado. So if you have more people, it's going to cost more. The second is, what type of people did we have? In Colorado, what they contracted for and what they mostly got were temps. They were people that EY recruited. They weren't the EY employee, and we think that the EY employee and all the training and skill that it takes to get there gives us a very skilled person working on that claim. The overall number of claims that we set based on the timeline we thought was more aggressive, and we think the ultimate hours that were put in justify it too. But I can tell you from the start, they took the benchmark of that and they could break down all the differences for it. The type of claim that was contracted for in Colorado that they knew that they were going to be working on is also less time intensive and less complicated. And good for Colorado, it means they had other people working on the most complicated ones. We need a different amount of help from EY. And so again, we can always answer those questions and more at the hearing, but I feel like we negotiated a fair deal based on the differences that we have with Colorado, and I think we were offered one too. All right, everybody. I want to thank those that have stuck with us all week. We are in a dangerous time of escalating cases. And I'm going to continually repeat this, but we know how to stop it. It's time to come together, to make sure we do what it takes, and to ensure we don't have to take steps backwards. We want to take steps forward, knowing that we're going to have to deal with this virus 5, 6, 7 more months in some form before we have a readily available vaccine. Means we got to show we can do it now. So let's get those practices in place. Let's not go on vacation to places that we could bring it back. Let's just make smart decisions out there. We're going to be providing video updates both tomorrow and on Sunday, and then we'll be back on Monday to say where we are. Everybody be safe, look out for one another, love your neighbor as yourself by wearing that facial covering and staying 6 feet apart from them. Thank you all very much.